Legend of Total War here, and today we're doing another Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires campaign review, this time covering High Queen Khalida. So Khalida's start position in Immortal Empires is Libaris, which is the same start location she had in Mortal Empires in Warhammer 2, but in the Vortex campaign Libaris didn't exist, so she actually started off in Southern Lustria. Your starting enemy in Immortal Empires is the Silver Host. Now this is possibly the biggest case of a double middle finger that the game has to offer a player experience in the early stage of the campaign with this faction here, because you are only able to recruit one army, without using an exploit, in your early game Tomb King campaigns, and these guys here have two armies. Now you're led to believe that beating this guy here and occupying the settlement here is the way to go, but if you do this, like I said, the game gives you a double middle finger. Because what happens over the end turn on turn 2, if you capture that settlement, is that this army force marches down to here, raises the dead, so he ends up with more, like a very large army, and on the end turn of turn 2, will attack Libaris, capturing your capital. No other faction in this game offers an experience where the player loses their capital this early on, except for like Hag Grief, where you can sell your capital, but that's different. So you can prevent this from happening, but don't capture the Doomglade. So this is what you want to do. On turn 1, you want to defeat this army, so obviously attach the hero. Also, another thing to note is that patch 3.0 appears to have broken the right unlocking conditions for all the Tomb King player factions, because they're all available right from the get-go. Normally there are certain conditions you need to meet, so you can grab the Great Incantation of Tahoth right on turn 1. You don't need to do this, but I checked with the other Tomb King lords, and they've also got all their rights available on turn 1. So grabbing this one here is definitely the one to do, because getting a Casket of Souls will make dealing with larger armies than what you can field a lot easier, since this has the possibility of killing hundreds of zombies or skeletons or whatever is going to be facing you. Anyway, so you defeat this army here, but rather than move on to the Doomglades, move back north and recruit 1 unit of archers and 2 units of Nehekara warriors. Over the end turn on turn 2, if you do this, the army that's stationed here will force march to Mahrak, and he'll raise some dead over there. And they'll also recruit a Necromancer and start recruiting. So then on turn 2, what you want to do is go into ambush stance over here. Now I thought about going into ambush stance on the turn 1, but to try and lure the Lord down this way, but for some reason, if you don't capture the Doomglade, this guy here just sits there, because he kind of somehow predicts that you're somewhere in the area and is not going to threaten Libaris. So don't go into ambush stance, you just miss out on recruiting. So then after you've recruited, and you're on turn 2, move into ambush stance on this turn, and move to about here. Don't move all the way up to the edge, because there's a chance you'll get pulled out of ambush stance, because the closer you are to an enemy character, the higher the chance of you getting pulled out of ambush stance, and you need to make sure that your ambush stance doesn't get detected. So stay about there, which is enough movement so that you can attack Lamia on the next turn, because this is the strategy that we want to do here. Now, if you instead think, why not just recruit on this turn, what happens is this guy force marches back over here with his near full stack, and capturing the settlement of Lamia becomes significantly more difficult, so you don't want to do that. So yeah, you've gone into ambush stance over the end turn on turn 2, and turn 3 arrives, and there's a dude standing outside the settlement, and Lamia is more or less undefended. You can now attack Lamia, and it's a fairly easy battle. Capturing this settlement from the vampire counts practically cripples them, and it gives you a settlement from which the vampire counts have a hard time getting to. And then from there, you can just be aggressive against them and push against them in any which way you want. And that's sort of the way to go, I think, for High Queen Khalida start, to not get screwed over, double middle fingered by the AI, on turn 2, which I think is really not fair. Now let's talk about High Queen Khalida's as a legendary lord. I definitely think that she is the least interesting or the weakest out of the 4 Tomb King legendary lords, because she's the only one that's not a spellcaster, and she doesn't have particularly good bonuses either. Being a spellcaster isn't essential, but it just reduces the amount of overall power that she has on the battlefield. Like, for example, Settra is just as good of a melee fighter as her, but he's also a spellcaster. Okay, so her trait is Beloved of Asaph, which gives minus 50% casualty suffered from all attrition, Lord's Army, which, that can be helpful. Not in the early stage of the campaign, because you don't suffer from attrition from vampire counts anyway. Corruption, minus 3 local province. Enables poison attacks to Lord's Army. The enabled poison attack is the most useful part there. Then if we have a look at her unique skills, there's not much in here. Like I said, she doesn't have a spell line because she's not a spellcaster. Generic blue line, generic red line, generic melee line, and then you've got these up here. This ability here can be used by other lords, so that's not unique to her. Then you've got True Blessing of Asaph, which upgrades her starting ability, Blessing of Asaph, which provides a 35-meter effect radius, just boost to missile units. Then this one here just upgrades that. Instead of a 15% buff, you've got a 25% buff. Also, on this new UI change, I'm still getting used to it, but what I've noticed is if you want to like hover over things, you have to wait for that like red animation to occur first if you want to drag over here. Otherwise, it just closes it on you. Okay, then over here you've got Purified. So 2 points can be put into this, which will reduce the attrition that you take by an additional 25% and give you passive ability regeneration on the second skill of that. Libaris' Best gives recruit rank +3 for skeleton archer units and provides a global bonus of ammunition plus 25% for skeleton archers, all armies faction wide. Then you've got Legions of the Asp Goddess, which gives you Legionary Barrage for armies in the local province. That's a very good ability. And then Embodiment of Asaph, which gives you melee attack and melee defense +5 for Sepulchral Stalkers and Necropolis Knights for her army, leading that unit to be sort of the most buffed unit for Khalida. Now, I've run with this kind of army before. It's not the best, but you can do it a lot better in Total Warhammer 3 than you could in 2. You could also go with spamming like skeleton archers, but honestly, my advice would just be put those units in other armies because she provides that as a global bonus. It's not going to be any different in terms of how much ammunition she provides. Then we've got Warrior Queen over here, which provides physical resistance and ability Frenzy. So that stuff's, it's okay, but compared to the other Tomb King Legendary Lords, she doesn't boost any hero skill recruitment. It doesn't increase their capacity. There's not too much in terms of global bonuses. It's just not really that significant. If we have a look at her item, she has the Venom Staff, which causes -5 corruption local province, enables magical attacks, armor piercing, weapon damage +40, and ability the Venom Staff, which can be a bit derpy. This is not a very good item, so Khalida's fallen behind a little bit there. As a Legendary Lord, I don't think she's very good. She's definitely, in my opinion, of course, the weakest of the 4 Tomb King Legendary Lords. Now, when we look at her faction effects, however, I think these are pretty good. Diplomatic relations +10 with all factions, that's alright, but the Tomb Kings have access to the trustworthy trait, so their lords are able to globally increase the relations with all factions, but getting an additional 10 there's no downside to that. Research rate +15% is very good for the Tomb Kings. This allows her to recruit her second lord on turn 13, or takes 13 turns to research it, as opposed to 15 with the other guys. But of course, Arkan the Black already has a massive advantage in having a second army straight from the get-go. Get control +4 all provinces. That is something that is only really going to be beneficial if you're playing on legendary difficulty. All other difficulties, you're not going to care about your public order in the early stages of the campaign, which is the only time it really matters. So that's not that big of a deal. And ammunition +20% for all armies. Overall, I definitely think that the buffs that Libaris has is pretty good and compensates them for Khalida kind of being rubbish. Because the Tomb Kings aren't able to confederate the other legendary lords, so not having access to Cetra is a bit disappointing when playing as Libaris, or really any of the other 3 legendary lords, because she just doesn't really feel that good on the battlefield, or her buffs to her army or campaign are particularly strong, which is why I usually recommend play one of the other Tomb King legendary lords, because for one thing, they don't have this FU of a bloody start position where the game has a double middle finger on you. But also, just as the lords progress, they are more interesting than Khalida. But if you're looking for a challenge, this is possibly one of the more challenging start positions, if not Katep's start position is probably more challenging. But overall, I don't really recommend Khalida's campaign, not unless you're really a big fan of Khalida herself. That being said, I am a big fan of the Tomb Kings. I just think that the other Tomb King legendary lords are better, and I would say that this is the least interesting out of the 4. But I like Tomb King, so I still play her every now and again. Anyway, that's the end of this one here, guys. Let me know in the comments below what you think of High Queen Khalida, whether you agree or disagree with my assessment. Also, try out that strategy and let me know how it goes for you. I ran through this a couple of times to see all the possible different combinations, and if you follow my my guide exactly, you should get consistent results. Anyway, that's the end of this one. Appreciate you guys. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Later.